Welcome to Higher Self Mastery, the podcast for women ready to leave behind who they were told to be and remember who they truly are. I'm your host, Dharmi Schumacher. This is your space to come home to yourself, to honor the inner pull for more truth and more depth, and more meaning as you enter a new chapter of your life. Together, we're reframing midlife crisis into the midlife magic that it actually is, because this is your rebirth. Through soulful conversations and spiritual tools, you'll reconnect to your truth and reclaim your voice and live the life that your soul came here for. So let's begin. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Higher Self Mastery. I'm your host, Dharmi Schumacher, and this is our very first episode of 2026. Welcome and thank you so much for starting your year with me. I so appreciate you journeying with me. I'd like to begin today's episode with a question for you, a question that you may have already had asked of you over the past week, and that is, how was your Christmas? How was your New Year? How was your festive break? And I really actually want you to answer this question, not in a way that you may have done politely in conversation to your friends, your colleagues, but truly, how was it? Because some of the responses that I've received when I've asked this question of people, friends, family, and strangers, haven't shocked me, but at the same time have saddened me and really made me think quite deeply about what on earth is it that we're doing so wrong. Because the majority of the answers that I got were, I'm exhausted, it was chaotic, I need a holiday from the holiday. I also got a lot of, it was quiet. But what I didn't get or hear so far was, it was the best day of the year. It was everything that I wanted it to be or could have dreamed it to be. It was amazing. It was so much fun. It was so expansive. Like, none of those people that I've spoken to and asked have responded in a way, whatever their chosen words, but responded in a way where they lit up, that truly showed me from every fiber of their being that it was fulfilling and their cup was filled and they feel fresh and renewed. It was really quite flat, or even worse, depleted in their energy. Those were the kind of responses that I was getting. And if I'm honest with you, if you ask me that very same question, my response is it was anticlimactic. It really was. And it's not the first time that I felt like Christmas has been an anticlimax. And I'm starting to really question, what is it that I have to do differently so that it doesn't feel like that? And by no means am I under any illusion that it is just one thing at play that contributes to how we feel afterwards, right? There are so many layers. There is the financial pressure. Maybe we spent too much in gift giving and presents, and now we are worried about having less finances available for the January. Then there is, of course, the January SAD blues, the seasonal affective disorders that some people suffer from because it still is quite dark and it is cold and the days are still quite short, even though they are getting longer. It could be that, when we come back out of the holidays, and now most of people listening will have returned back to their regular routine, their schedule. The kids are back in school, offices are back open, everything's back to normal. We're back to that normal daily schedule and normal grind, and everything's come and gone in a blink of an eye. There's so many variable factors. Some of the family dynamics that we may have had to navigate over that period, maybe the loneliness that you may have had to navigate over this period, or the grief if you missing people in your life who were not with you, that you really wished that you were able to share Christmas with this year. So many layers, the comparison, the expectation, this idea of this perfect Christmas, right? There's all of these different layers. And we could be here all day discussing and breaking apart each one of those. And they're all very valid factors to look at in your life, which is why I even mention them here. Because if you are one of those people who, like myself, feel like, oh my gosh, it was anticlimactic, and I don't want 2026 to be anticlimactic as well, like in terms of the Christmas, or it was chaotic or it was exhausting, but I don't know why, then let those topics, those different factors give you some kind of a starting point that you can go off and do some kind of internal inquiry yourself. Like, how did you navigate those things, right? Did you overcommit? Did you host more than you really should have? Did you get enough rest? Did you give yourself enough time off? I know I definitely didn't this year. I don't think I'll be making that mistake again. I realized just how important it is for my well-being to have a big chunk of time off, especially in the middle of winter. So there are so many different layers and factors that will contribute to your experience of your festive break. But there's one thing that was going around and around and around in my mind even before Christmas began, if I'm being honest. It was a conversation that I touched on with some girlfriends of mine, I think back in October or even November. And it's sort of just been there at the back of my head. And then came Christmas, and now Christmas is gone. And it's just resurfaced as one of those key contributing factors that I believe how, as a society, we are really doing things out of alignment and really ignoring how our ancestors lived and missing the opportunity to learn from their wisdom and allow them to lead by example and to go back to some of those rhythmic ways. And what I'm talking about here is really, it's not about trying harder in 2026 of Christmas, but more about spreading the magic out. We don't need a perfect Christmas. What we need is more of a rhythmic life. And by that, what I'm talking about is it's this build up and anticipation leading to Christmas that I feel like is one of the major contributing factors that grates me personally, and I know it does others as well. It grates me down. It becomes this overdrawn out expectation so that when the day arrives, it's just, there's been so much leading up to it. There's no way, it's absolutely impossible that one day can then fulfill all your needs when you have been building and anticipating it for months to come. And of course, this is a bit of a tricky one to navigate because it's everywhere around us, right? As soon as the summer sales are over and they start putting up the new autumn and winter products and they switch things around, you can start seeing little sprinkles of Christmas products on the shelves as early as September. And it's that kind of thing, the pressure that we see all around us from the commercial world, from retail and from other money-making industries, that it starts to seep into your mind subconsciously, consciously, and it just starts popping up. And then before you know it, there's little ads here and there. And I subscribe to Netflix, and I believe even as early as September, there were one or two Christmas movies knocking around. If not in September, certainly in October, like early parts of October, they were already there because I was looking for Halloween movies and I was finding Christmas movies. And that was not only shocking, but somewhat disturbing because there's just so much of a fanfare that builds up to Christmas. And I have a rule in my house that there's no mention of putting up a Christmas tree or Christmas decorations before December the 1st. I think that's long enough. And now this year, I'm tempted after having still feeling like I had an anticlimactic Christmas this year. I feel like, gosh, maybe I'll rein that in as well come Christmas of 2026. But the pressure's everywhere, right? You see it and then you start comparing yourself because the neighbors have got their twinkly lights up, or you're driving around and you start to see all the pretty little twinkles of lights in people's front gardens and their trees through their windows as early as November, the end of November. And I understand for a lot of people, it gives them something to look forward to. And this is what I really want to talk about. And when I mentioned we not learning and taking lead from our ancestors, this is precisely what I'm talking about. Because traditionally, in different cultures, in different countries around the world, in different religions even around the world, whether it be Christianity, whether it were more Celtic roots or pagan roots, even in Hinduism, which was my upbringing, we have always seen the year sprinkled with multiple celebrations throughout the year. So, for example, with the Celtic and pagan celebrations, they follow seasonal cycles. So they are almost mathematically divided because you have the summer solstice, the winter solstice, spring equinox, autumn equinox, and then a few others in between. So they're very precisely sort of divided up, and they mark changes of light, changes of seasons, changes of what we receive from nature through the shifts as we go from one phase to the next. So there'll be a celebration of the harvest and that sort of thing. As a Hindu, I was raised a Hindu. I'm not a practicing Hindu now, but I was raised as a Hindu, and we had so many different festivities and celebrations, multiple celebrations a month. I'm almost sure of it. I think I had double the amount because my parents are practicing Hindus of a very particular type of Hinduism. So they have additional celebrations and festivities that they participate in and acknowledge on top of the big ones that mainstream Hindus also celebrate. So there was the birthdays of all these gurus, these teachers, and then the birthdays of all these many gods and goddesses. And then you would have things like the changing of the season when the winds would come in India. So there was the kite flying season. Then you had Holi, which is when we would build this big bonfire when we'd throw color on each other, and it's a change again of the seasons. And then there was Navratri, was the season of dance, and you dance for 9 days. And then, of course, there's Diwali, and there was all these other different things that went on. But my point being here is that you never had to wait very long, weeks at most, sometimes less than a week and a half, right? Sometimes there were multiple festivals, celebrations happening within a space of 7 days. And you just never had to wait very long. And that's, I believe, is the key here. What we're missing as modern society in our culture, what we're really getting wrong, and why Christmas has this enormous pressure all around it, because so few people celebrate anything else. most people who celebrate Christmas celebrate it from a commercial perspective anyway. Like, how many people actually honor it for the Christian values that it actually stands for? How many? So few. It's just this commercial holiday, and the retailers have just rinsed it for everything that they can and have drawn it right forward, pulled it forward all the way to September. So it's seeding in your head that, okay, we're going to start buying presents and start doing this and start doing that. And it's just constantly in the back of your head. And by the time it comes around, you're just over it. At least I feel like I'm so over it, because nothing can live up to that kind of an expectation. Whereas if you've only got a few weeks to build the anticipation for an event, for a celebration, that is humanly possible to do. Like, you can't possibly build it up and put it up on such a pedestal where the experience or the event then cannot fulfill that expectation, because you're only building it up so much. Whereas with Christmas, you're building it, and it's sitting on this pedestal that's just so far up there. And think about the kind of things that you hope to get from your Christmas day or your Christmas festive experiences, whether it's that one day or a few days, or, however you look at it. I know in myself, it's like, I want it to be magical. I want it to be full of friends and family. I want it to be full of connection. I want it to be full of joy and laughter. I want it to be full of fun and games. I want it to be full of creativity. I want it to be full of rest. I want it to be full of nice, delicious food and comfort. I want it to also be full of nature. That's a lot. How is it possible to fit all of that realistically into one day? You could, but you're sort of jumping from one thing to the other, right? Maybe over a stretch of a few days. Yeah, possible. That's a little bit more realistic, but that's still quite a lot in terms of it only takes other people to come and join your environment, your experience, with a very different mindset, with a very different emotional attitude, and for that to spiral out into a completely different scenario. Right? There's just too many variables there, because it involves that connection, it involves environment, it involves other people and things like that. So when it doesn't go how we want it to go, or doesn't fulfill all the things that we hoped it would, naturally there's this sort of like, okay then, and I think it's really unfair that we do put so much pressure on this one day of the year. I don't think it helps that Santa is involved. I love Santa. I do still. I'm 46, but I love Santa. And I love that my daughter still believes in Santa. I think she knows he doesn't exist, but she refuses to say it out loud and admit it. But that puts a lot of pressure on things as well, like this really magical aspect of Christmas. And it doesn't have to be this way. If we go back and look at what our ancestors did and spaced things out and celebrated all these different markers, different events, whether you're celebrating the birth of a goddess or a god because you're religious and that's a deity that you look up to, or whether you're celebrating the changing of a season, or whether it has no spiritual or religious connotation whatsoever. Maybe you pick a random day in your diary once a month, right? I wouldn't do it less than once every 2 months. I'd say at least 6 to 8 markers in your year. 8, I would say, is a really nice number. If you can do once a month, even better. But that gives us the ability to have something to look forward to. Research has been conducted time and time again. There's one particular research study, a report that I was reading as I was looking into this a little bit more, a study carried out in 2010 and published in the PubMed Central National Library of Medicine. And they were looking into the link between holidays and happiness. And a couple of really interesting things that they found was, one, most of the joy and happiness was in the anticipation of the holiday. And that's what we're talking about here. The anticipation is what is really lighting us up and expanding us. How many times have you been away on a holiday, like on a flight somewhere or a weekend away somewhere, and it may have been wonderful. It may have been really nice, but did you ever sit to compare it to what it actually felt like, to the build-up of it? I almost guarantee you, like, it was the build-up of going there that was half the experience in itself, depending on how long you had to look forward to it, right? And then the other thing that they found as well, that for the residue of that happiness of the experience to continue beyond the experience itself, was heavily influenced and determined by how much rest people actually got. So why not recreate that throughout the year, multiple times throughout the year for yourself? Whatever it is you decide to celebrate. I've recently, over the last few years, really begun to work with the seasons. So for me, I mark spring equinox, I mark summer solstice, I mark Samhain, I mark winter solstice, I mark these traditional Celtic and pagan festivities. They resonate for me. But up until now, I've been sitting in quiet ritual. And I think what I'm going to endeavor to do, and this is where your invitation is that, can you make it something more so that you can have some anticipation to look forward to that particular point? Maybe you book yourself in for a retreat or a workshop on those particular dates. Or if it's just a day in the calendar that you're booking off, maybe once a month you take a holiday on the Monday and you have a long weekend, but you plan it in such a way, if it's something that you're going to do with your family, you let everybody know there's no chores, there's no housework, and that is just connection time, or that is your adventure time, or that is your time to have fun, enjoy, or rest, whatever it is. And that's the other thing as well. Spread out these different things that you crave and share them out amongst the different events. So maybe one of those events is where you focus on the adventure and the fun. The next one is where you focus on the rest and replenishment. The next one is where you focus on the creativity. I don't know, like try and spread it out. So then when you do come to Christmas, it's just another one of those celebrations, just the 12th one that you're doing of that year. And so there isn't so much of this pressure. Now, I know it's not that straightforward. I'm not living in a bubble. I understand the collective pressure of everything that's going on around us. Is really, really hard to avoid that seeping into you subconsciously and consciously, right? Because there's this massive tide of people all moving in this direction and you get swept up in it. I appreciate I might be triggering some people here and may have even pissed some people off here, and I apologize if I have, but at the same time, I'm speaking my truth. I talk about this because I know from my experience and having spoken to people over the years that this is a real issue, that this is a real problem, where Christmas is this big build up and it just doesn't deliver on what people are hoping it will deliver. And that's really difficult, that tide of people that are moving towards it. let them do them. And it's probably because a lot of these people don't celebrate anything in between and before to break up their year. For sure, people go away in the half-term breaks, especially if you've got kids, you go away in the half-term break. In February, maybe you might go on a summer holiday break, or you may go away in the October half-term. So there are those little markers where you may break up your year to help you move forward. But not everyone has that luxury to go away on a holiday for a week and go abroad and do something like that. But it doesn't have to be something big. Like I said, it could just be that you take time off and all jump in the car and go out for the day. It doesn't have to cost anything. Go down to the beach, for the day or something like that, or go for a nice walk in the fields or in the mountains or wherever it is that you happen to live. Or it can be something small and inexpensive, maybe you pay for a little workshop for yourself and that costs you £35. It doesn't have to be like this big, £2,000 holiday that's going to put a dent in your pocket. So do what you can with the means that you have, right? There's always something you can do. There's not an excuse. But the reason I'm talking about it now is because I want you to acknowledge how you are feeling right now as you have just stepped out of this period of 2025, out of the Christmas and New Year's of 2025. If I did this episode in September, November, or any other time of the year later on this year, you will have forgotten how you are currently feeling. And you will say, but this year will be different. And I am going to do things differently. And then before you know it, you get swept away into it. But also, it might be a little bit too late because you haven't then made time to break up your year as you've gone along. So then by the time you do come to autumn, you're just still hanging and waiting for this Christmas period where you really get to stop. And then you're back where you started and you've repeated, what you've just done this year. If what I said right at the beginning resonated for you, where you also thought, yeah, it was anticlimactic for me. Yeah, it was exhausting for me. You have to do something different. I'm not saying what I'm suggesting here is the solution and it's going to fix everything. Like I said, there are so many layers to what may contribute to the pressures or the disappointments around the Christmas period. It is so much more complex. But I do believe that this could be something that could really make a difference for the better. And it's something that I'm going to be trying out. This is not a tried and tested solution. This is something that I'm experimenting with in real life myself and just sharing it with you because I don't want to do the experiment, keep it quiet and keep it to myself for the year and then get to the end of the year and be like, oh my gosh, guys, guess what I discovered? And it was amazing and it was a game changer and it was brilliant. Now here I'm sharing it with you and now you go off and do it for 2027. I mean, I could do that. But if I share it with you now and you decide to come along for this journey and try it out in your own way for yourself, how many more of us will be at the end of 2026? Because if it does work, we'll all be like, yeah, that worked. And I really see the benefit of that. And I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to do more of that, right? And you tweak it as you go along. This worked, that didn't work. And we can share and compare notes at the end of the year. But I want you to, if this does resonate for you, in your annual diary, if you keep a diary for 2026 or somewhere else where you can remember to look back at it, come the sort of autumn winter period at the end of this year, I want you to come back and remember this and reread it. And I don't want you to just say it. I want you to write it because you will forget if you just say it. Record a voice note, if you don't want to write it. But I want you to write down, make note of, how are you feeling right now? I'm asking you that question. How was your Christmas and how was your New Year's? And write down the honest answer there. And then have a look at how You want to do things differently. What worked, what didn't. What you want to keep, what you want more of, what you don't want to repeat and see any more of. And with that in mind, how can you spread out what you need through the year? What little moments and pockets can you carve out that are going to help alleviate this ridiculous pressure that we put on this one day of the year? Because the answer is not trying harder. The answer is not about a perfect Christmas. It's about spreading the magic through the course of the year. It's about rhythmic living. And that is my invitation to you. So please write in, leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, or just drop me an email as well. I just really want to hear, first of all, your answer to that question. How was your New Year's? How was your Christmas? How was your festive break? And if this resonated for you and you're going to try it out once you've had some time to think about it and plan it and put something in the diary, what is it you're going to endeavor to do this year so that you don't repeat it? And when you do come round to Christmas 2026, it's going to be a much more healthy, happier, joyful, easeful experience. I'd love to hear what you're going to do. Thank you so much for joining me. And please do subscribe so you don't miss when these episodes drop. I'm so grateful to have you and start the year with you all here. And I hope you stay with me for this journey and this ride. And let's see where we go. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Higher Self Mastery. If something landed, moved you, or sparked a shift, I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with a woman in your life that is also ready to rise. And if you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast, especially in these early days. It really helps others to find this work too. If you're craving deeper support and sisterhood, join my mailing list using the link below, where you'll be the first to receive free meditations, learn about up-and-coming retreats, and other ways that we can work together. Until next time, honor your truth and trust in the timing of your becoming.